The Sixers are a road tripping. Welcome to the Sixers Talk podcast brought to you by Wilmington University. Will Works, Danny Pommells, Noah Levick, our Sixers writer for NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com, Ben Berry in the wings on this podcast, our producer / co-host. Hey, 2-1. Here we are with the season underway. 2 games have happened since we last were with you guys. So hope you're doing well. Hope everything's well. How you doing, Noah?
I'm doing fine. Yeah, it was cool to be back there for the home opener. Obviously, not the result Sixers fan would have liked. Felt very familiar to the Hawks series, but there was a lot of juice in that building, so that was cool. And then, as we'll get into, we've seen some special shooting thus far from one Seth Curry.
Yeah, got to give him his props off the top. Him and his brother. Steph, of course, have the highest scoring quarters in this season in the NBA. Hey, it's early in the season, but you put up a 25-point quarter like Steph did, and then a 23-point quarter like his little brother Seth did against OKC. You're going to ring some bells. We'll get to that game in a minute because it's frustrating that he didn't score points again until later in the game after erupting in that first quarter. So I don't know if that's just a byproduct of how the game went because it ended up being a blowout, or the fact that the Sixers didn't do a good job getting the ball. We'll focus on that in a little bit. But let's get to that home opener and kind of take things chronologically. So, man, the home opener happens. The Sixers looked like they might have a chance at like a wire-to-wire win, but suddenly a 16-1 run by the Brooklyn Nets, a couple of air balls by Danny Green, a triple-double by Kevin Durant, maybe a controversial non-challenge by Doc Rivers on that charge by Danny Green, that he took a charge from Kevin Durant, Danny Green did, but it was called a block and the Sixers didn't challenge it. But a lot of things happening there. Here's where I want to start, though, Noah, because it seems to be something that a lot of people are talking about, fans as well as insiders. And I'm not going to say that the Sixers lack a closer, but because I don't feel like that's their issue necessarily, and that they really don't have an issue, quote unquote, as early in the season. But I'm really just looking at the fine print of things. And you have Joel Embiid as your main scorer, but there also has to be, him being a big man, it has to be someone to get him the basketball to be able to be the scorer down the stretch or the go-to guy. Do you feel like the Sixers suffered a bit? Maybe his knee injury is the reason why he didn't check into the game, late in the fourth quarter. I think he checked in with about 4 minutes to go. But do you think the Sixers suffer a bit from Joel being in situations where he maybe not necessarily can't initiate offense, obviously, because he's in the post, and that kind of maybe be something that they need to address here along the way?
Yeah, I think for a while we've said the Sixers haven't had much in the way of perimeter shot creation, probably since Jimmy Butler departed. I do think, rewatching that game, they had 8 straight empty fourth quarter possessions, but it's fair to say that a lot of those generated good to great looks. Tobias Harris missed 2 floaters. You'd normally expect him to hit at least one of those. Embiid had a comfortable look from just inside the foul line, and then also a contested layup on a play where he thought he got fouled. So those are 3 or 4 possessions where normally you'd expect the Sixers to score. And I think part of what stings about that game is they put themselves in such a great position where they really only needed 1 or 2 just fruitful possessions, and somehow they couldn't manage it. And it really did feel similarly catastrophic to that Atlanta series, where just every single thing that possibly could have gone wrong just kept piling on top of each other. Of course, the Danny Green air balls get a good amount of the spotlight, and that's highly unfortunate and unusual for a veteran who normally shoots the ball quite well to not even able to hit the rim. Doc Rivers said afterwards they want Green to keep shooting. Obviously, that's probably a comment that some Sixers fans did not agree with, but I think it's fair enough. Danny Green has a long track record, and sure, you don't want him shooting the ball over Embiid or Harris, but a couple of those are late in the shot clock, and Danny Green, you would expect at least a little bit better down the road in terms of coming up, in the vicinity of the basket, or oftentimes, of course, knocking those down. But yeah, to your larger point, I think it's reasonable, but I also think this was a situation where the Sixers were just highly, highly unfortunate, and it's going to happen.
Right.
And yeah, it hurts a lot. It hurts a lot, given this would have been a really strong early season win against the championship favorites, but they couldn't get it done.
Yeah, just a cascade of issues there down the stretch. All the stuff we just talked about. Seth Curry goes 1 of 2 from the free throw line, which you don't expect. Um, I'm looking at the way the game ended, and the fact that they couldn't score when it mattered most is what people are alarmed about. But it was LaMarcus Aldridge on the defensive end that was out hustling the Sixers, getting clutch baskets. He turned back the clock a bit in a way that you might not have expected, because it wasn't necessarily just Kevin Durant or just James Harden, putting the Sixers away. It was really a guy maybe you wouldn't have expected to come up clutch. When we look at the Joel Embiid situation, I touched on it a little bit, but he checked in the game late in the fourth quarter. He was at the scorer's table for a little while. But if you just kind of couple that with, the way he banged his knee in New Orleans, the off-season non-surgery with the meniscus, and I'm not a doctor, so I don't know everything that's going on. But then the game time decision, Sunday, as we come to you guys here in between games, as they play the Knicks on Tuesday, he's a game time decision against OKC, and Andre Drummond's out. So it was really the Sixers were the back against the wall in that situation. We saw Paul Reed playing with the second unit, and it was no issue because of how well the Sixers were able to put OKC away. But is this knee thing, we've dealt with these lingering issues with Embiid. We've dealt with the game time decision stuff. But we're 3 games in, Noah, to be dealing with this stuff now. Are you concerned about the knee? Do fans need to be paying attention to that more?
Yeah, I think it's fair to have some degree of concern. Embiid, after the Friday night loss to Brooklyn, he acknowledged it's extremely sore. He had a knee-to-knee collision opening night, and it hasn't totally dissipated. And I think he's shown that he's capable of playing through pain at a very high level, and evidently he did that against Oklahoma City. I thought he was very impressive, like running coast to coast very early in that game and rising high to block an attempt.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
Paisley dunk.
yeah, that was a bold decision, and Embiid emphatically denied that attempt to put him on a poster. But so in terms of the movement and does he seem compromised, I don't see anything concerning on that front. But if your star center, who you rely on so greatly, is telling you that his knee is extremely sore and he's showing up on these injury reports so early, yeah, that's far from ideal. And we'll keep monitoring it, and we'll keep listening to what Joel Embiid has to say about it. That has to be on your radar if you're a Sixers fan. At least he's able to play under 30 minutes last night. They do wrap it up, at least in the sense of Paul Reed and George Niang being able to play at the 5 to close that game out. But Joel Embiid, his health always is paramount, and he is not at 100% health right now, which is not great for the Sixers.
Sixers miss a chance to make a big home opening statement against the Brooklyn Nets. Obviously a nemesis, a team that they will be jockeying with for position in the Eastern Conference and division, what have you. Here we are where Shake Milton is dealing with the ankle. Andre Drummond is dealing with the ankle. Joel Embiid, early on with this knee thing. We know Tobias Harris and Matisse Thybulle have had issues in the preseason that haven't shown up in the regular season as of yet. The Sixers trying to get on the mend. Still the issue with Ben Simmons. We can't go much further without addressing that. Ben citing, mental health issues. He's just not quite in the right headspace. The team, Joel Embiid specifically at the home opener, addressing the fans, using the words, Ben's our brother, and we're going to give him a chance. Tobias Harris coming out on social media, and I think it was the Shams Charania report. He quote tweets that with the fact that, we're going to give Ben a chance to, get things together, and we're going to give him the leeway to try to, come back into the fold and what have you. Is the outward expression and what the Sixers are saying the same as behind the scenes, do you think? Are those things congruent?
I think with Joel Embiid, you look at some of the comments about not wanting to babysit and considering Simmons is holdout, borderline disrespectful and all that. Like, maybe the support for Simmons isn't as wholehearted as it might appear on the surface, but I do think it's absolutely genuine that Harris and Embiid and the leaders on this team care about Ben Simmons as a person. I just think, there are some tricky distinctions to make here with that. And then, okay, what does him holding out
actually playing on the team
now
look
not
like?
Playing? Yeah, just what it means for their jobs is different than their, concern for Simmons as a human.
Right.
So, it's tough. And, I think it's a difficult area to know how to handle for these guys. And I think, yeah, for us, we're just trying to stick with what we know, which is Simmons told them he's not mentally ready to play, that Tobias Harris wants his teammates and the whole organization to respect that stance. And so we'll see what's next. But, for now, at least as far as when might he play, there continues to be very little certainty about that. Doc Rivers said they'll make sure Simmons sees the right people and then go from there. As of now, he's been listed out these past couple of games for personal reasons, and there's no firm timeline on when he might join the team. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see what's next.
Do you consider where we are now and the fact that Simmons addressed the team in the locker room? He reportedly met with the front office before shoot around against the Brooklyn Nets. Do you consider where we are now and the fact that he's reportedly seeking professional help to deal with his mental health issues? Do you think that, this is a harbinger of what's to come, that maybe this is the conduit to him returning to the team, and maybe, there being some sympathy or empathy or what have you toward his return and him playing with the organization? Like, do you think that these are the steps that are getting toward that, or these just, more things for people to sift through in order to get to the basketball? Do you think he'll actually suit up for the Sixers soon?
It doesn't seem like we're trending toward that happening soon. It has been framed, I think, by Doc Rivers and Harris and Embiid as like this was a good initial step, that we're moving in a positive direction, that there's this openness and just point blank a dialogue. Like Embiid said, this is the first time that he spoke with the team since that game 7, I believe. So really, that's quite a long stretch, and a lot has happened.
Reportedly, Embiid asked him directly, why do you want to be traded? Why did you ask for a trade? Yeah,
like a lot of difficult questions there that have just not really been addressed head on. And not to say that everything was covered in this meeting, but at least the Sixers seem to see it as, okay, it's good that there is some sort of dialogue here, as opposed to this just very frosty sort of standoff rather. But I think it would be inaccurate to say that we have a great feel now for what's going to be next. And we're really just in that wait and see day-to-day mode for the time being. And again, I think we've got to try to stick to what we know as best we can. Simmons isn't mentally ready by his own estimation. The Sixers are supportive of him, seeing the right people he needs to perhaps get to a point where he is mentally ready. But for now, the priority is just his well-being and looking out for him and being supportive of him, or at least that's how Tobias Harris sees it.
Putting a bow on the Brooklyn Nets game, a tough loss for the Sixers, particularly because they played so well at home. And it's just, And I want to say, when I say play so well at home, I mean over these last several seasons, they've had a great home record. But like you said, Noah, so much of that game against Brooklyn just brought up all of the specters and ghosts and demons from that Atlanta Hawks game and how things went down the stretch. Hopefully the Sixers are learning from this. And do you feel like particularly just when we're looking at turning points, the new rules regarding coaches challenging calls as opposed to things being directly reviewed by Secaucus or by the referees, did you think that kind of caught the Sixers up a bit? Were they not prepared as quickly as they should have been to say, yes, we want to challenge, or no, we don't, on some of those dicey calls there? There was one where it didn't matter, where it ended up going out of bounds on Kevin Durant, it looked like, but the Sixers got the ball back. But the block charge call specifically, it seemed like that was a turning point moment. I think LaMarcus Aldridge ended up scoring on that play. But did you feel like the Sixers maybe were caught a little bit off guard there?
It sure looked like it. Yeah, they handled that situation quite poorly, to be honest, especially given, it's late in the game and obviously pivotal calls, and
it's intense. Yeah.
You gotta use them when there's an opportunity to shift the momentum like that. Doc Rivers said he has someone behind the bench who gives them the thumbs up or the thumbs down, and he was advised not to pull the trigger. So I guess you shift the blame to that behind the bench.
That you are person behind the bench, nameless person behind the bench.
Yeah, we'll try to keep an eye on who that person might be next time there's a potentially challengeable call, and get some insight on exactly what this process is. But, evidently the process did not work well. And the NBA's last 2-minute report confirmed that call would have been overturned if the Sixers challenged it. As you mentioned, the Kevin Durant call didn't end up being consequential. That one was also obviously wrong, as anyone watching the game saw. So, those are two pretty costly mistakes, and they ultimately fall on the head coach. He's the one who has the decision there, and he got both decisions wrong. Maybe there are a little bit of growing pains of just this being a slightly unfamiliar process for him, and it just not being used to having to worry about that, like in the last 2 minutes of the game. But no debating that those calls cost the Sixers big time.
It's just such a classic armchair quarterback moment where anybody in the stands, on your couch at home, hey, that wasn't, you just jump up and scream and point and but it's just, in the heat of the moment, it's a little bit different than just, saying, hey, you should have challenged, or that was off of Durant, or what have you. But it's not a loss, quote unquote, if you learn from it. So hopefully there's a lesson there that the Sixers can grow from and use as the season progresses, because I'm sure those moments will come up time and time again as they look to fight their way to the top of this Eastern Conference heat.
Yeah, my sense too was just a lot of the frustration from fans was Doc Rivers clearly not coaching a very good game, or at least a very good final few minutes of the fourth quarter. And to be frank, like not having a great explanation for what exactly happened with Embiid and why he wasn't subbed in until there was 4:12 left. He said like he just wasn't able to do it, and he would have subbed him in if he could. But then why was Embiid, standing up and ready to check in with 6 or 7 minutes left to go? Like the explanation there, at least for me, just didn't really add up. So, and then of course, the comment about Danny Green, wanting him to continue to shoot after I just think there was a lot of fans who were perhaps eager to pile on Doc Rivers, and I can understand that being a frustrating loss, and Rivers not coaching a great game and getting the challenges wrong, which as you say, is something that like any fan can see was, a screw up from Doc Rivers. So not a great game from the Sixers head coach, and that was one element of it. Leaving those challenges unused.
Ready to make a move? A Wilmington University education can take you where you want to go. WilmU works online or in person. Learn more at wilmu.edu. Well, hey, we kind of took our medicine in that last session. That was the bad and the ugly. Let's get to the good and talk about this OKC when OKC's not, running to the championship this year. Great. But it's the start of a road trip. The Sixers come out and once again play well. And, my God, Seth Curry, bro, it was just phenomenal to watch.
How about the first quarter from this guy, Seth Curry?
Absolutely on fire. Credit to his teammates for recognizing the hot hand. But how about this guy? 8 of 10 overall, 6 of 7.
Hey, Noah, it's easy for us to remember how good he was at the start of last season before he contracted COVID. And to see him, he played well in the playoffs too. So to see him pick up, right where he left off, I think he had 23 in the Brooklyn game as well. And he ends up with 23 in the first quarter against OKC. So the shot was clicking. He was feeling good. He ends up hitting a nice dagger at the end of the game where he shushes the crowd right in front of the OKC bench. So his confidence is just through the roof, But he really set the tone in this one. And it was just a pleasure to watch and enjoy, because who doesn't love an incredible shooting display, particularly by someone with the last name Curry. And it was just one of those games where you just sit back and just let Seth Curry do his thing in that first quarter. A lot to get to in that game, but he set the tone and the team followed, and it was a great start to the road trip.
Absolutely. He had a great quote after the game to the reporters down there in Oklahoma City, saying basically, like, when I get good shots, this is normal for me. Like, this is nothing out of the ordinary. He said it wasn't like I was taking 18 dribbles, half court, Steph-like shots. I was just taking shots that I expect to make. And though he did cool off a little and wasn't as prominent, offensively for the rest of the game outside of that dagger, he began this season 21 for 27 from the floor and 12 of 14 from three-point range. Just outlandish numbers. And okay, maybe, he's exaggerating a little when he says this is completely normal for him. It doesn't feel extraordinarily fluky either. It feels kind of.
Oh, yeah. It's all in the flow of the game. He's shooting the corner three a lot of these times. He's wide open some of these times.
And this is a player who's just historically among the NBA's best at long-range shooting. And okay, probably the realistic expectation for him is he ends up somewhere around the career average at 45% from three this year. But
still, wow.
Which would be great. But,
yeah,
in the postseason, he was much higher than that. He started this year much higher than that. He's feeling good physically and finally seems to have shed some of those lingering cardio effects he was feeling from having COVID. So maybe he's got something even better in store. Like, I'm not sure I would entirely put that past him. I think a lot of it does just depend on the shot quality, and Joel Embiid deserves a lot of credit for orchestrating the Sixers offense very effectively from the post against double teams, and that leading to a lot of the aforementioned good looks for Curry. But, this won't last forever in terms of him shooting 70, 80% from 3-point range. But maybe he flirts with like 50 or something like that. I don't know. We shall see. But it's fun to watch, and he's a fun player to have on the Sixers and get to see him for 82 games a year.
And forgive me if I'm wrong, but this is the first time that he's been on a team, the same team, for consecutive seasons, 3 seasons in a row. Like, he has never played on the same team for that same amount of time. I'll double check that, but I just feel like at this point, if he's not getting those open looks, like, that should be, how an NFL team scripts the first 15 plays or what have you, like, that should be part of their offense, is to get him going, get those open opportunities. Okay, yeah, like, it's a basketball game. Like, that's not always going to transpire that way. But at the same time, it's just, you got to go with the hot hand. And particularly, I feel like this team in particular, the shooting begets other good shooting. You know, when Seth starts going, Tobias starts going, Danny Green, Niang. And I was definitely encouraged by the fact that they shot 41 3-pointers in this game, considering that we have been asking them to shoot more threes and to, you know, get more opportunities and looks from the outside. And, you know, it was not the same clip. I think they made about 17 threes, I believe it was, but it's not the same clip as you would have liked that they had from the first game percentage-wise, but at the same time, they're getting more looks from the outside, which will eventually turn into even more points.
Yeah, and so much of it has stemmed from the attention that Embiid inevitably draws in the post. Oklahoma City, I think, was accurate in the self-assessment that no one on that team could guard Embiid one-on-one, and so the double teams were frequent and aggressive, and he looked very, very comfortable dealing with them. On a 6-assist night, is now averaging 5 per game through the first 3, which I think is encouraging for the Sixers. And on top of that, I think he's done well in the context of the Sixers spacing still sometimes being rather flawed and problematic. Like, there were a couple of noticeable examples last night where Tyrese Maxey was in a no man's land or moving as Embiid tried to throw the ball or what have you. So there are still some noticeable issues there, but they don't seem to be phasing Embiid too much. He seems to, despite some of the lack of comfort around him spacing-wise, be pretty sure of himself with his passing and his decision-making out of the post. Of course, for him, one of the biggest tests always in a playoff setting is whether he can sustain that. Obviously, the turnovers were a real issue in the Atlanta series, but
Right.
So far, so good for him with the passing and decision-making out of the post. So credit to him for starting well on that front.
Just to clarify, this is the first season Seth Curry has been on the same team for back-to-back seasons. I thought it was 3 seasons in a row, but it's 2 seasons. I thought he was with Dallas back-to-back seasons, but he went to Portland in between. So this is the first time in his career that he's played on the same team from one year to the next. So I'm sure some of that comfortability it helps with, you know, knowing where you're going to be, laying your own head, your contract's taken care of. It just probably helps him in just the mental space of being able to go out on the floor and handle his business as well. I'm sure that helps. And, you know, I think it's safe to say, if we want to give, you know, some props to the front office, they kind of won that Josh Richardson trade. If this was the deal that helped them land Seth Curry, you know, he fits well here. And I could see, you know, I could see another, you know, wing player on the roster. But I at one point I thought there might be, you know, Seth Curry coming off the bench kind of with that instant offense. But I feel like he's kind of starting to cement himself as, you know, their starting 2 guard for the foreseeable future, trade or not. You know, maybe there's a wing that they trade for the 3 position, possibly, just, you know, spitballing. But I'm starting to really like Seth Curry. Not that I hadn't before, but it just seems like he looks so natural there, you know, moving without the ball. I'm not sure he can run the point as much as Doc Rivers might want him to with Shake Milton out, but when he's in his role, it's just really comfortable and enjoyable to watch, and I feel like he fits well.
He's the kind of player you have to start, no question. I think the question that hasn't disappeared, you know, magically over these first 3 games is a Maxey Curry backcourt viable defensively? Yeah. You know, there haven't been too many great tests for them thus far. I was personally impressed, at least with Maxey's ball pressure and just competitiveness, and also avoiding fouls against James Harden. I mean, that's a very difficult matchup. And I thought when he squared up against Harden, he looked pretty good. He had a more difficult time last night against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who had a nice night for OKC with, I believe, 29 and 8. And then
9 of 19 from the floor.
Yeah. I mean, he's a good player, and you know, Maxey had a tougher night there. I think Curry, though, You do wonder if he's going to be capable of playing in closing playoff lineups, or whether Matisse Thybulle would be the preference, or whether Furkan Korkmaz would be the preference. Obviously, we're projecting far down the line, and as you say, if a Simmons trade were to happen before then, that shakes up the whole composition of the Sixers roster, and who knows exactly what that means for Seth Curry. But the offensive versatility just makes him such a valuable player, given, okay, he's not a pure point guard, but he sure looks awfully comfortable running those side pick and rolls with Embiid. He moves really well off the ball. He believes in himself as a pick and roll ball handler. And, he's a historically great shooter who is comfortable, as you said, with the Sixers, and has formed a really strong partnership offensively with Embiid. So he's a great pickup, no doubt, for Daryl Morey. And that draft night for Morey, I think it just looks better and better the further we get out from it. Of course, the other notable move that night being the Danny Green, Al Horford trade, which I think in the big picture has also worked out quite well for the Sixers.
You mentioned Maxey, and he's a second-year player trying to step into the starting lineup, and tough assignment last night with Shai Gilgeous. I just feel like offensively, I want him to be more aggressive. I feel like there's opportunities where his quicks can get him to the hoop, but maybe he's trying to run the offense more, or maybe not look for his shot as much. But, and there's other times where I think he gets the ball in rotation and won't put up a three because of whatever reason. But I just feel like he has the green light, and maybe, based on his conversations with Doc Rivers and what he wants to execute with the offense, Maxey is just trying to take a step back and acquiesce to the other veterans. But I feel like him being more aggressive would benefit the team more, because that makes everyone respect his offense just as much as they might respect the shooting of the other guys that are on the floor. So, if he can beat his man one-on-one, or, because sometimes I feel like he'll look for his shot or opportunities to shoot the ball on, an offensive rebound or like a second attempt, rather than, him thinking that, I'm going to shoot on this possession and we'll figure it out afterward. I just want him to be more aggressive, and I'm sure that'll come with his confidence and whatnot. But I think that he has more opportunities that he doesn't take advantage of, and that would benefit the team more if he did.
I'd agree with that for the most part. I think it's been a common theme in each of the first three games where he is kind of taking a step back in the early stages and looking to avoid mistakes and be smart with the ball. And then in the third quarter, he sort of turns it on. And I think for the most part, when Tyrese Maxey turns it on and shows off that downhill burst, it's really exciting and really effective. So no reason for him to not try to do that a little more. But he is, of course, in a tough and unusual position here, where Ben Simmons is in many ways like an irreplaceable player, and yes, a flawed player, but an all-star level player. And at 20 years old, Tyrese Maxey is certainly not yet an all-star, and needs to, I think, lean into his strengths. I'd agree with that. I do think it's positive, though, that he's pretty much avoided bad mistakes, and he does understand that part of the role of a point guard is to be responsible and get other guys involved, and to have a feel for the game. And I think, on a good note, the Sixers sure had a feel for the fact that Seth Curry had it going on and did a great job of finding him opportunities last night. But for Maxey, as we forecasted heading into the season, a lot of this is about just that delicate balance between playing his natural fast-paced style and being a part of an offense, and at times a leader of an offense. So that's going to be an adjustment, and that's something he's figuring out early in the year.
The Oklahoma City Thunder's home arena, known to be raucous, known to be loud. I'm sure the Garden will be that plus some, as the Sixers head to New York to take on the Knicks, a national game that will be fun to watch and see them get back on the floor. Hopefully the Sixers are more healthy for that game. Probably won't have Shake Milton. Hopefully Andre Drummond is back and Joel Embiid isn't a game time decision. do you feel like the Sixers are? I feel the momentum and the push. We can go game by game, but I feel like they're possibly off to one of those hot starts again, like they did last year. Hopefully, they don't get derailed like they did through losing Seth Curry to COVID and things like that. But I like what I'm seeing. We didn't really get into the others, George Niang and Matisse Thybulle and what have you, Furkan Korkmaz. But I don't feel like in the OKC game that they took away or needed to be, nitpicked about how they played or what have you. I think Niang played great, but I feel like that second unit in particular is really giving me some good feels. I can see them making a difference here against the Knicks and on the rest of this road trip and throughout this early season run. It'll be interesting to see what that second unit becomes. I didn't feel like they were quite as what they are when Andre Drummond is out there, but I'm really encouraged by the second unit and just continue to look for more success from them.
Drummond in that Brooklyn game, that was unique and a thoroughly enjoyable experience. And look, it wasn't all positive. Aldridge burned him in that pick and pop in the second quarter, and he had one of those head scratching sort of turnovers, but he did some awfully impressive things in that game with the interior physicality and the rebounding, and the one mind-boggling in a good way behind the back pass to Niang, unfortunately missed the open three. Drummond, it was disappointing that he didn't get to follow up on that by playing against Oklahoma City because he had the ankle sprain. But he adds a very different element to that second unit for sure. I think, and I fell into this too, heading into the year, you kind of thought of him as similar to Dwight Howard in many ways, but just maybe a younger, slightly better version. But we're seeing he's a distinct player and a unique guy. And he feeds into that second unit, at least in the early stages, developing that identity as a group that shares the ball and likes to set each other up and likes to have fun and move and a lot of sort of positive qualities that he seems to bring to that table. It should be a fun one at the Garden. The Knicks will be motivated to play better, you would think, after losing to the Orlando Magic at home. You would think that the Sixers will get a good version of the Knicks, and it won't be an easy game to win. Then after that, you're looking at 4 straight games at Wells Fargo Center, one of which will be against the Atlanta Hawks. So we will stay tuned for that one.
Trae Young at the Garden will be fun to watch when that happens. Trae Young in South Philly will also be fun to watch when that happens. We'll be here with you every step of the way. For Noah Levick and Ben Berry, I'm Danny Pommells. This has been the Sixers Talk podcast brought to you by Wilmington University. WilMU Works. We'll see you next time.